The void was quiet, too quiet for what was about to happen. That silence stretched like an omen across the cold, dark expanse of Varkos 7's outer belt. But then it came. A hum in the darkness, a formation of ships moving with eerie precision, engines pulsing like a war drum. The human fleet had arrived. At the helm of the flagship HFS Vindicator, Captain Marcus Ryland stood with arms crossed, jaw clenched so tightly it ached. His eyes didn't blink as he stared out the massive viewport, straight at the enemy. The Zarn were clustered beyond the field of debris that used to be Sarek colony. Now it was just floating metal, scattered limbs, and burnt-out domes. Over 100,000 civilians gone, erased like they never existed. No survivors, no warning, no reason. "They're not even reacting," Commander Vela said quietly beside him. Her voice was calm, but her knuckles were pale on the console. Marcus didn't turn. "They're not used to being challenged." The Zarn had never feared humanity. Why would they? Every time they struck, they did so without retaliation. Every human response had been defensive, diplomatic, measured. But Earth had had enough. There was no more time for talks. Not after Sarek. Not after what they did to his brother. "Fleet reports ready," said Lieutenant Greaves. "Weapons locked, all ships in position." Marcus gave a small nod. "Good. Begin the assault. Target their drives. Don't kill them quick." The bridge lit up in crimson as human weapons came online. Railguns, kinetic torpedoes, beam cannons, all charged and pointed straight into the maw of the Zarn fleet. The first salvo tore through the silence like judgment. The Zarn never saw it coming. Human ships moved like blades, sleek and fast, their attacks coordinated down to milliseconds by fleet AIs. The Zarn ships, grotesque, organic-looking things with bone-white hulls and squirming appendages, started to rupture under the pressure. Hulls peeled apart, internal organs spilled into space. The enemy had no time to react. They scrambled, chaotic, disorganized. The Zarn had fought hundreds of species, always as conquerors. They'd grown soft with victory. They thought humans were slow, emotional, easily broken. They didn't know what humans looked like when they were done playing defense. "Direct hit on their command cruiser," Vela said. "They're in full retreat." Marcus's mouth curled into something between a smile and a snarl. "Not yet, they're not. Push forward. Box them in. No mercy." Another Zarn ship tried to escape the encirclement, but 3 Terran corvettes flanked it, cut it off, and blasted it to fragments. For a moment, the battlefield looked like a star field of fire. Alien shrieks echoed faintly across comms channels as their distress signals bounced back unanswered. "Captain, Admiral Voss is requesting a status update," Greaves said. "Put him through." The Admiral's worn, battle-scarred face appeared on screen. "You've gutted their core force, Ryland. Good work. Sweep their flanks. Leave no survivors unless they surrender. You know what to do." Marcus gave a curt nod. "Aye, sir." The line cut. Marcus turned toward the tactical map. He wasn't smiling anymore. "They killed everyone on Sarek," he said, voice low. "Scientists, children, my brother. For what? To test their weapons?" "They're paying for it now," Vela replied. "Not enough," Marcus said. "Not yet." The Vindicator veered into the thick of the wreckage, weaving between drifting corpses and dying enemy ships. Human drones moved behind them, tagging floating Zarn for collection. A few tried to fire back, but their weapons were sporadic, uncoordinated. They were panicking. Another cruiser exploded under a triple hit. Marcus didn't even flinch. This wasn't war. This was retribution, and humanity had become very, very good at that. "They thought we were weak," he murmured. "That was their first mistake." Vela glanced at him. "And their last." Behind them, what was left of the Zarn fleet scattered in full retreat. What few ships survived the initial onslaught limping away, trailing debris and fluids. The human fleet didn't pursue right away. Not yet. First, Marcus wanted them to know they were hunted. "Deploy capture teams," he ordered. "I want prisoners. I want them to see us, to hear us, to understand what they started. And maybe, just maybe, they'd live long enough to carry a message back to the stars." Humanity wasn't afraid anymore. The battlefield still burned in silence. Where once the enemy fleet floated with arrogance and dominance, now there was only wreckage, mangled, splintered, adrift. The glow of human warships illuminated the debris with an eerie glow, like lanterns in a graveyard. Yet inside the HFS Vindicator, there was no celebration, just the cold, methodical machinery of vengeance still in motion. Debris fields cleared along the western perimeter. "Minimal resistance," Lieutenant Greaves reported. "Recovery drones are sweeping for Zarn survivors." Captain Marcus Ryland nodded slowly. "Good. Have containment units standing by. I want them secured, not dissected." "Not yet." Across the bridge, officers moved with silent urgency. No one smiled. No one laughed. The victory had come too fast, too clean, and everyone felt it. There was no fight, no war cry, no back and forth, just a slaughter. And somewhere deep in his chest, Marcus felt it too. It wasn't enough. "They're running," said Commander Vela, watching the real-time tactical map. "Small clusters trying to slip into hyperspace. Should we pursue?" "Not yet," Marcus said. "Let them crawl away. Let them think they've escaped." He leaned against the edge of the command console, staring at the carnage before him. "Because the second wave's coming." "From them?" she asked. "No," he replied. "From us." The first Zarn prisoner was a nightmare to look at. Roughly the size of a small horse, its skin looked like it had been burned into place, dry and cracked like old bark, shifting with each movement. Its limbs were uneven, bone-like protrusions jutting from different angles. Where eyes should have been, there were glowing slits, watching everything without blinking. Marcus stood on the other side of the reinforced interrogation chamber, arms crossed, saying nothing. Just watching it. "I don't know why you brought that thing back," said Dr. Kian Telford, the ship's exobiologist. "It won't talk. Their kind never does." Marcus gave him a glance. "I don't want it to talk. I want it to feel." He stepped into the room. The Zarn hissed and thrashed weakly against the magnetic restraints. But Marcus didn't flinch. He walked right up to it and stared into those glowing slits, unblinking. "Do you understand me?" he asked. No response. "You murdered my people. You slaughtered them like cattle. And you didn't even bother to clean up after yourself. Was that fun for you?" The creature didn't move. But the glow in its eyes changed. Not with fear, something worse. Amusement. Marcus's hand twitched. He'd lost men before. He'd lost friends, comrades. But what they'd done on Sarek, it wasn't war. It was butchery. Entire families melted in their beds. Life support ripped offline. Infants, scientists, medics, none spared, including his younger brother, Simon. He clenched his jaw. "We're not like the others. We're not going to kneel and beg for our lives. You made the mistake of assuming Earth was just another colony." He leaned in closer. "You came to Sarek to test our will. Now we're here to test yours." The Zarn gave a guttural hiss, still no words, but again, amusement. Dr. Telford shook his head from outside the room. "These things don't have language the way we do. Their communication is based on hive impulses, pack dominance. You're wasting your breath." "No," Marcus replied calmly. "I'm planting a seed." He turned away from the alien and left the room without another word. Because the message wasn't for that one creature. It was for all of them. Later that evening, The War Council met in the command chamber. Marcus, Vela, Admiral Voss, via hololink, and a few ranking fleet captains sat around the projection of the starfield. Latest scans show the Zarn have fully withdrawn from the Varkos system, Vela reported, but we're detecting unusual warp signatures near the Takari rift. Marcus nodded. That's where they'll regroup. It's the only place in this quadrant they've held for longer than a year. Their breeding nests are hidden there, deep in the nebula, protected. Which means, Admiral Voss said, flickering slightly through the hologram, they'll send reinforcements. Or worse, Marcus added, they'll retreat deeper and rebuild. Come back even stronger. The room fell silent. They won't stop, Marcus continued. They don't fear death. They don't value peace. They don't have culture, honor, or even greed. They exist to consume and expand. Sarek wasn't a tragedy. It was a test run. What's your proposal? Voss asked. Marcus straightened. We finish it. We take the fight to their home territory, hit their breeding grounds, their storage clusters, not just their fleets, but their infrastructure. We wipe their memory of us with fire. An offensive operation inside the rift will cost ships, maybe a lot of them, Voss warned. Marcus didn't hesitate. We've lost more than ships already. It's time to make them feel it too. Silence followed. The battlefield still burned in silence. Where once the enemy fleet floated with arrogance and dominance, now there was only wreckage, mangled, splintered, adrift. The glow of human warships illuminated the debris with an eerie glow, like lanterns in a graveyard. Yet inside the HFS Vindicator, there was no celebration, just the cold, methodical machinery of vengeance still in motion. Debris fields cleared along the western perimeter. Minimal resistance, Lieutenant Greaves reported. Recovery drones are sweeping for Zarn survivors. Captain Marcus Ryland nodded slowly. Good. Have containment units standing by. I want them secured, not dissected. Not yet. Across the bridge, officers moved with silent urgency. No one smiled. No one laughed. The victory had come too fast, too clean, and everyone felt it. There was no fight, no war cry, no back and forth, just a slaughter. And somewhere deep in his chest, Marcus felt it too. It wasn't enough. They're running, said Commander Vela, watching the real-time tactical map. Small clusters trying to slip into hyperspace. Should we pursue? Not yet, Marcus said. Let them crawl away. Let them think they've escaped. He leaned against the edge of the command console, staring at the carnage before him. Because the second wave's coming. From them? She asked. No, he replied. From us. The first Zarn prisoner was a nightmare to look at. Roughly the size of a small horse, its skin looked like it had been burned into place, dry and cracked like old bark, shifting with each movement. Its limbs were uneven, bone-like protrusions jutting from different angles. Where eyes should have been, there were glowing slits, watching everything without blinking. Marcus stood on the other side of the reinforced interrogation chamber, arms crossed, saying nothing. Just watching it. I don't know why you brought that thing back, said Dr. Kian Telford, the ship's exobiologist. It won't talk. Their kind never does. Marcus gave him a glance. I don't want it to talk. I want it to feel. He stepped into the room. The Zarn hissed and thrashed weakly against the magnetic restraints. But Marcus didn't flinch. He walked right up to it and stared into those glowing slits, unblinking. Do you understand me? He asked. No response. You murdered my people. You slaughtered them like cattle. And you didn't even bother to clean up after yourself. Was that fun for you? The creature didn't move. But the glow in its eyes changed. Not with fear, something worse. Amusement. Marcus's hand twitched. He'd lost men before. He'd lost friends, comrades. But what they'd done on Sarek, it wasn't war. It was butchery. Entire families melted in their beds. Life support ripped offline. Infants, scientists, medics, none spared, including his younger brother, Simon. He clenched his jaw. We're not like the others. We're not going to kneel and beg for our lives. You made the mistake of assuming Earth was just another colony. He leaned in closer. You came to Sarek to test our will. Now we're here to test yours. The Zarn gave a guttural hiss, still no words, but again, amusement. Dr. Telford shook his head from outside the room. These things don't have language the way we do. Their communication is based on hive impulses, pack dominance. You're wasting your breath. No, Marcus replied calmly. I'm planting a seed. He turned away from the alien and left the room without another word. Because the message wasn't for that one creature. It was for all of them. Later that evening, the War Council met in the command chamber. Marcus, Vela, Admiral Voss, via HoloLink, and a few ranking fleet captains sat around the projection of the starfield. Latest scans show the Zarn have fully withdrawn from the Varkos system, Vela reported, but we're detecting unusual warp signatures near the Takari Rift. Marcus nodded. That's where they'll regroup. It's the only place in this quadrant they've held for longer than a year. Their breeding nests are hidden there, deep in the nebula, protected. Which means, Admiral Voss said, flickering slightly through the hologram, they'll send reinforcements. Or worse, Marcus added, they'll retreat deeper and rebuild. Come back even stronger. The room fell silent. They won't stop, Marcus continued. They don't fear death. They don't value peace. They don't have culture, honor, or even greed. They exist to consume and expand. Sarek wasn't a tragedy. It was a test run. What's your proposal? Voss asked. Marcus straightened. We finish it. We take the fight to their home territory, hit their breeding grounds, their storage clusters, not just their fleets, but their infrastructure. We wipe their memory of us with fire. An offensive operation inside the rift will cost ships, maybe a lot of them, Voss warned. Marcus didn't hesitate. We've lost more than ships already. It's time to make them feel it too. Silence followed. The entire fleet ignited. Beams, missiles, kinetic shells, all fired at once, turning the rift into a strobe of light and flame. Where Zarn flyers rushed in, human point defense cut them down. Auto turrets shredded anything within 100 meters of the main hulls. Drones deployed countermeasures, electromagnetic flares, decoys, radiation pulses. But still they kept coming. The Zarn weren't just attacking. They were defending. They're trying to block our advance, Vela said, eyes wide. They're not retreating. They're forming a wall. Marcus clenched his fists. Because what's behind them is worse. He knew it in his gut. This wasn't just another skirmish line. The Zarn were throwing everything at them, like fanatics guarding a sacred temple. And humans weren't stopping. Not now. Not after Sarek. Captain, Greaves called. One of the recon drones picked something up, transmitting now. The projection on the main display shifted. A massive biological structure loomed inside the rift, cocooned by gas and darkness. It looked like a moon-sized tumor, pulsing, alive, stitched together with tendrils of metallic bone. Around it were smaller nodes, ships being grown directly from the hive, forming like tumors on skin. It wasn't just a base. It was a womb. My God, Vela whispered. They're breeding a new fleet. Then we burn it down, Marcus said coldly. Sir, Greaves said hesitantly, that structure is massive. The heat signatures alone suggest it contains millions of larval Zarn, possibly civilians, if they even have a distinction. Marcus didn't respond right away. The silence weighed heavy. Then he spoke. So did Sarek. No one argued after that. The assault began with coordinated fury. Every human capital ship focused fire on the central hive. Wave after wave of explosive payloads tore into its thick outer shell. The Zarn responded with renewed madness. More swarms, bigger ships, suicide runs. Several corvettes were destroyed in minutes. One destroyer, the Iron Ray, was impaled mid-flight by a Zarn cruiser and detonated from within. But still, the human fleet pushed deeper. "Bring in the dreadnoughts," Marcus ordered. "We're cracking that shell even if it kills every one of us." Massive railguns fired in synchronized bursts, punching straight into the hive's outer layers. Flesh peeled, bone cracked. Bioplasma spewed out in gouts. The rift itself seemed to scream. The hive tried to regenerate. Human missiles denied it the chance. Then something shifted. From the center of the hive, a new signal emerged, something no one had seen before. A ship, or maybe a creature. Both? It was enormous, twice the size of any Zarn vessel recorded. Its body was plated in obsidian chitin, segmented like a centipede, and armed with weapons that bled light and sound. It moved like it was alive, twitching and groaning as it slid from the hive's core. The bridge fell silent. "What is that?" Vela whispered. Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Their queen." It launched toward the fleet. 3 ships were vaporized instantly, torn apart by beams of green fire. The thing was a monster, a fortress with a soul, and that soul wanted blood. Marcus didn't hesitate. "Divert all remaining power to weapons. Lock on target and fire everything." The Vindicator roared to life, every weapon port screaming as 1,000 payloads launched toward the creature. The rest of the fleet followed. Even as they took hits, even as shields failed and hulls ruptured, humanity pushed back. They were outgunned. They were outnumbered. But they were human. And when humans decided they were done being prey, nothing in the galaxy could stop them. The Queenship's outer shell cracked under sustained fire. A coordinated torpedo volley slammed into its midsection, rupturing it in a storm of molten bone and screaming fluid. It twisted, shrieked, lashed out with desperate strikes. But the fleet didn't slow. One final charge. The dreadnought Hammer of Sol collided with the creature head-on, sacrificing itself in a blaze of nuclear fire. The explosion was blinding. The beast's back snapped, split open, and from its ruptured body poured flame, bile, and silence. It was dead. The Zarn fleet broke. Without the Queenship coordinating their hive minds, the remaining enemy forces scattered, disorganized, and wild. The human fleet tore them apart. In 20 minutes, the battlefield was empty. The hive structure, once pulsating with evil life, now floated in silence, cracked, blackened, dying. "Captain," Vela said, voice hoarse, "it's over." Marcus stared at the view. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from everything he'd held back. The grief, the rage, the guilt. He took a breath. "No," he said, "it's just beginning." She looked at him. "We just destroyed a civilization's heart." He turned to her, voice low. "Then let it be a warning." The Vindicator turned slowly from the remains of the hive. Behind them, fires burned in the void, and the rift finally fell silent. The rift had gone quiet, but the silence wasn't peace. It was aftermath. Wreckage floated everywhere, a chaotic ballet of twisted metal and scorched flesh. The remains of the Zarn hive drifted like a dying god's corpse, leaking bioplasma and shredded bone into the cosmic ether. What the human fleet had done wasn't a victory. It was a warning written in blood and ash. Inside the HFS Vindicator, the tension hadn't lifted. The crew moved mechanically, some bruised, some bloodied, but none broken. Yet something hung heavy in the recycled air, something colder than space. Captain Marcus Ryland stood in the observation bay, hands clasped behind his back, eyes scanning what was left of the battlefield. Ships still burned out there. Drones continued collecting debris. Rescue shuttles flitted back and forth, gathering the wounded and tagging the dead. His own reflection stared back at him from the thick observation glass, drawn, pale, older than he remembered. Commander Vela joined him, silent for a moment before speaking. "Initial casualty reports just came in," she said, voice strained. "We lost 47 ships, nearly 8,000 crew." Marcus didn't look away. "And how many Zarn?" "Hard to say. The hive was breeding when we arrived. Conservatively? 2 million, maybe more." Silence. "And their queen?" he asked. "Confirmed dead. Whatever that thing was, it had command authority over the entire swarm. Once it fell, they scattered like feral beasts." Marcus gave a slow nod. "Then we did our job." "Did we?" she asked carefully. He turned toward her. She didn't flinch, but the question hung between them. "We wiped out an entire generation of their kind," she said. What if this wasn't a victory? What if we just created a power vacuum we can't control?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "Then we deal with it, like we always do." She didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. He looked back out the window. "Vela, I don't regret what we did," he said quietly. "They turned Sarek into a tomb. They made it clear they don't understand diplomacy. That kind of enemy only understands pain." "And we gave it to them," she said. "But pain spreads, Marcus. It lingers." He didn't respond, not because she was wrong, but because she was right. The days after the battle were filled with silence, repairs, and bodies. The Vindicator was docked with the fleet's mobile repair vessel, Forgebreaker, while engineering crews patched hull breaches and rerouted damaged systems. Medical bays overflowed. The smell of antiseptic and scorched wiring filled every corridor. In the hangar, Marcus watched as a line of body bags was lowered into a sealed transport pod. Each bag was tagged with a name. Rank, homeworld. Some were just labeled unknown. Simon's face flickered in his mind. The kid had never even held a rifle. And yet, in a way, he was one of the first casualties of this war. Marcus clenched his fists. The weight of command didn't feel like pride. It felt like guilt wrapped in steel. The lives he'd avenged came at the cost of others. Good soldiers, young officers, promising cadets. People who believed in him. And now they were ashes in the stars. "Captain?" a voice called from behind. Dr. Kian Telford approached, looking unusually tense. The exobiologist rarely left the science wing unless something was on fire. Or worse, interesting. "We have a situation." Marcus arched a brow. "Go on." "We've been studying the biological remains of the Queen ship," Telford said. "What's left of it anyway, and, well, it's not dead." Marcus blinked. "What?" "Biologically, it's ceased function," the doctor said quickly. "But its neural tissue is still firing, weak but active, like it's in hibernation, or communicating remotely." Marcus's stomach turned. "Communicating with what?" "That's the problem. We're detecting low-frequency pulses, subspace level, but rhythmic. Not random. It's like a distress signal. Or a warning." "Are they receiving it?" Telford shook his head. "Nothing's come back. Yet. But if the signal's reaching deep space..." Marcus didn't need the rest explained. They hadn't destroyed the hive. They'd alerted it. Later that night, Marcus sat alone in his quarters, staring at Simon's old holovid again. It was just 20 seconds of footage. His brother laughing, standing barefoot in Sarek's greenhouse, holding a tomato like it was the rarest artifact in the galaxy. "You know what the stars need more of?" Simon had said, grinning. "Tomatoes." Marcus had watched it over 100 times since the colony fell. He closed the file. If another wave of Zarn was out there, if another queen or greater hive answered the signal, Earth wouldn't survive a second war. The fleet was damaged. Supplies were running thin. Morale was shattered. He had one chance, one move left, and it would break every rule left in the books. The Emergency War Council convened the following morning. Admiral Voss appeared via hololink, face etched with concern. Several fleet commanders joined in, along with Dr. Telford and a few AI advisors. "We confirmed the distress signal," Vela explained. "It's consistent with previous Zarn communication patterns. The Queen ship may have functioned as a relay hub, transmitting a final burst as it died." "Could another hive respond?" one commander asked. Telford nodded grimly. "If there is another. The Zarn aren't like us. They don't have borders. Their empire may not be visible on star charts, but they're out there." Voss looked to Marcus. "Captain Ryland, you proposed a contingency." Marcus stood. "Yes, sir. I call it Operation Blackout." The room quieted. "The idea is simple," Marcus continued. "We can't outrun them. We can't hide. But if they're coming, we can delay them. Distract them. We send a stealth ship beyond the rift, deep into Zarn-controlled space. We find whatever remnants of their network still function, and we destroy it. Completely." "Suicide mission," Voss muttered. "I'll lead it myself," Marcus said. Vela turned sharply. "Marcus, no." He didn't look at her. "I started this," he said. "I turned a counterstrike into annihilation. If there's a consequence, it should fall on me." "But you don't know what's out there," Vela snapped. "You'll vanish into enemy territory with no support, no reinforcements, and no extraction plan. That's war. Not when you don't come back." Voss cleared his throat. "Enough. Ryland, I don't like it, but I see your logic. If another hive is out there, Earth won't survive. We can't afford to wait." He sighed. "You have clearance. Pick your ship. Pick your crew. You leave in 72 hours." The hololink shut off. Marcus turned to Vela. "I want you to command the Vindicator in my absence," he said. Her jaw clenched. "You really think I'm letting you fly off and die alone?" "I'm not asking," he said softly. "I don't care." She stared him down. And he knew then, no matter what ship he chose, she'd be on it. Because some bonds are stronger than war. The ship they chose was a ghost. The Spectre, an experimental stealth corvette, black as a moonless void, built to hide from even the sharpest sensors. No identifying beacons, no emission trails. It moved like a shadow and hit like a ghost. Marcus stood at the airlock, watching the last of the supplies being loaded. Engineers made their final checks. Pilots secured flight paths. Dr. Telford approached, datapad in hand. "Coordinates are set," he said. "We've triangulated 5 possible hive remnants in deep space. We'll hit the closest one first." Marcus nodded. "And if it's active?" Telford gave a dry smile. "Then we hope its queen bleeds like the last one." Vela stepped beside Marcus. She said nothing, just stared into the distance, jaw tight, eyes distant. "You sure about this?" he asked her. "No," she said, "but I'm not leaving you." Marcus almost smiled. Almost. Then the Spectre's engines lit, a soft hum, barely audible, and just like that, they were gone, vanishing into the dark, chasing the echo of a dying monster, hoping to stop the next one before it roared back to life. The Spectre moved through space like a ghost, silent, undetectable, unseen. Its hull, layered in adaptive armor and electromagnetic masking systems, blended into the void. It gave off no heat, no signal, not even a whisper. From the outside, it may as well not have existed. And that was the point. Captain Marcus Ryland sat at the forward observation post, his eyes locked on the starless expanse before them. The ship's path curved toward deep Zarn territory, a stretch of space so devoid of charted movement it had been labeled the Hollow Veil. It was a place no human had entered, a place from which no signal had ever returned. Beside him, Commander Vela worked silently, reviewing the pulse scans from their last recon sweep. Though nothing had appeared visually, she could feel it. Something was out there, watching, waiting. "Still nothing?" Marcus asked. She shook her head. "No movement, no transmissions, no heat signatures, but the ambient radiation levels are weird." "How weird?" "Like something's absorbing them." That made Marcus's spine twitch. "Could be a cloaking system, biological maybe. Or artificial," she said. "A bigger hive, something that doesn't want to be found." Marcus leaned back. "Too bad. We're here to find it." He turned toward the rear of the bridge. "Doctor, Telford, what's your analysis?" Telford sat hunched over a data console, his eyes strained and dark-ringed from lack of sleep. "We've been tracking the subspace pulses," the scientist said. "Same signature from the Queen's neural net. Faint but consistent, like breadcrumbs." "And where do they lead?" Telford zoomed the holo map. A small star system lit up, completely off any established chart. No colonies, no survey logs, not even a name. "This one," he said. "A dead system. Barren, but I'm detecting faint gravitational anomalies." "Meaning?" "Meaning something big is parked in there. Mass displacement in orbit, too massive for a natural body. It's either a planet-sized ship or something even worse." Marcus stared at the blinking red light on the map. "Then that's where we go." 12 hours later, the Spectre arrived at the edge of the system. Everything about the place felt wrong. The star was dim, dying, maybe already dead, and the planets were husks. No atmospheres, no tectonic activity, just dead rocks spinning in silence. Except one. The third planet didn't rotate. It hung suspended, perfectly still, as if anchored in place, and in orbit around it, barely detectable even to the Spectre's advanced sensors, was something vast. A structure. A construct. A web. "Jesus," Vela whispered. "It's not a ship, it's a lattice." Hundreds, maybe thousands of Zarn vessels, all interconnected by tendrils of bone and sinew, stretched across the orbital plane like a cocoon around the planet. Energy pulses flickered between them. Green, rhythmic, alive. They weren't separate ships. They were one entity. Telford paled. "That's not a hive. That's a gestation cradle." Marcus's voice was a whisper. "They're building something, growing it." "Or breeding it," Vela said. Inside that cradle, the sensors finally picked up movement. A central mass, suspended in the heart of the web, pulsing with light. The signal they'd followed, the same neural frequency from the dead Queen, originated from that core. It wasn't a signal of distress, it was a beacon, and it had worked. "Multiple warp signatures inbound," Vela reported. "Dozens, maybe hundreds, from deep space. They're answering the call." "Then we're too late," Marcus said. Telford frowned. "Or just in time to kill them all." The Spectre couldn't go in guns blazing. It wasn't built for combat. It was a knife, not a hammer. But it had one advantage: stealth. The plan was suicidal, even by Marcus's standards. But they'd come this far, and Earth's survival hung on what they did next. They would infiltrate the lattice. They would plant a singularity bomb at the core, and they would destroy the cradle before it hatched. Marcus gathered his strike team in the drop bay. 10 in total. Elite operators trained for silent infiltration. Zero-gravity operations and worst-case scenarios. Vela stood among them, suited in matte black armor, helmet off, expression unreadable. "This is a one-way run," Marcus said, voice calm. "We're not walking away from this. If we succeed, Earth survives. If we fail, no one will ever know." Silence. No one flinched. "We drop in silent, no thrusters. Magnetic boots only. Target the core chamber, plant the device. Get out. If you can. If not—" He paused. "Then we make sure it's the last thing we ever do." They nodded. He met Vela's eyes one last time. "You don't have to come." She didn't even respond. The bay doors opened, revealing the endless black. They jumped. The cradle was alive. The moment they drifted close, they could feel it, like being inside a lung the size of a planet. The webbing pulsed. Structures throbbed. Veins the size of highways carried bioplasma through fleshy conduits. Ships formed and hatched and floated outward like insects from a hive. And yet, they weren't detected. Not yet. The team moved in silence, landing on one of the outer vessels and magnet climbing their way inward. Inside the cradle, gravity was inconsistent. Lights blinked with no pattern. Alien structures rose like tumors, living, breathing, growing. Vela broke radio silence. "Chamber dead ahead. That's where the pulses are strongest." Marcus checked the scanner. "All right. Telford, how long to arm the device?" "Once we're inside, 5 minutes." "Let's make them count." They entered through a ruptured air sac. Yes, sac, and emerged into the core chamber. What they found made even the hardened soldiers freeze. A creature, unborn but massive, floated in a tank of glowing green. 10 times the size of the queen ship they'd destroyed. Its limbs were still forming, bones stretching from shifting tissue. Its brain, clearly visible through a translucent skull, was active, scanning, calculating. It was aware, and it was waiting to be born. Telford whispered, "If this thing hatches, it's not just another queen, it's something else. A new evolution." Marcus pointed. "There, center of the chamber. That's where the payload goes." They moved fast. The device was unpacked, armed, placed against the pulsating heart of the chamber. Then it happened. The creature opened its eyes and screamed. Every ship in the cradle lit up. The pulse spread instantly. Through the web, through the air, through the void. Sirens erupted. Doors slammed shut. Fluid sprayed from walls. Alarms in a language they didn't understand shrieked from every surface. They had been discovered. "Contact incoming!" Vela yelled. "Thousands!" Marcus turned to Telford. "Now!" The scientist slammed the activation node. The singularity bomb began counting down. 2 minutes. That was all they had. Marcus turned to the team. "Fall back! Get to the Spectre!" They ran, through corridors of flesh, up ladders of bone, dodging tentacles and spines and walls that moved like muscle. Behind them, the hive roared. Drones poured in, spindly, fast, screaming in pulses. One of their squad, Hughes, was caught mid-climb, torn in half. No time to stop. The Spectre loomed ahead, cloaked but waiting. They launched grapples. One by one, they flew toward the hull, boots slamming onto the airlock. Then Marcus turned. Vela wasn't there. "Vela!" A tentacle had wrapped her leg, dragging her back towards the womb. She fired her rifle blindly, cutting through the flesh. But not enough. Marcus didn't hesitate. He leapt from the ship, slammed into her attacker, and severed the limb with his sidearm blade. She fell limp. He caught her. 1 minute left. They flew. The airlock sealed. The Spectre jumped. Behind them, the singularity bomb detonated. There was no explosion, just silence. And then, collapse. The cradle folded in on itself. Space twisted. Ships shattered. The womb imploded. Light disappeared into nothing. And then there was only dust. The Spectre drifted beyond the starless system, hidden in a shadow, watching the stars return to their natural order. Hours later, Vela lay in medbay, eyes slowly opening. Marcus sat beside her, bruised, bloodied but alive. "You came back," she murmured. He gave a tired smile. "I always do." She reached out, gripping his hand. "You stopped it," she whispered. "You really did." He looked out the small window toward the wreckage still floating in space. "For now," he said, "but not forever." He didn't answer. Because he knew, out there in the void, there were other hives, other cradles, other nightmares waiting to be born. But today, Earth had survived. And as long as he drew breath, Marcus Ryland would make damn sure it stayed that way. The silence of deep space returned slowly, like a curtain being drawn across a haunted stage. After the cradle collapsed, there was nothing left in that starless system. No light, no movement, not even radiation. The singularity bomb had done its job too well, collapsing everything into a tight gravitational knot no wider than a pinhead. Millions of unborn Zarn, vessels, data nodes, and breeding chambers, gone in an instant. But Marcus Ryland didn't feel victorious. He felt hollow. In the days that followed, the Spectre moved cautiously through the void, taking a wide, looping course back toward human territory. They didn't engage hyperdrive, not immediately. The crew remained on edge. Every flicker on the radar felt like a threat, every whisper through the walls like a warning. Vela recovered quickly, though her leg remained bound in a carbon brace. The medic said it would take weeks to fully regenerate the bone. She didn't care. She'd already started walking on it again, hobbling from deck to deck like a soldier who refused to be benched. Marcus found her one morning on the viewing platform, staring out at a pale red nebula drifting across the edge of the system. "You shouldn't be standing," he said. She didn't turn. "Can't sleep. Pain?" Number silence. He nodded, stepping beside her. "It's worse when the war ends, isn't it?" "Did it end?" she asked, finally turning to him. He didn't answer right away. "We killed their future," he said quietly. "But we didn't kill the past." She frowned. "What do you mean?" Marcus exhaled. "Telford's been running data scans since the cradle detonated. Something's off. That beacon we tracked to the hive? It wasn't the origin point. It was a relay. The signal came from somewhere else." Her eyes sharpened. "Another hive? Maybe something worse. We haven't found it yet, but the signal traces back to a region beyond the ferric expanse. That's outside mapped space." He nodded grimly. "Exactly." Dr. Telford's lab looked like a madman's nest. Screens glowing, data pulsing across dozens of projections, alien symbols twisting and converting through translation software. He hadn't slept in days, and the bags under his eyes looked almost fossilized. "You're telling me we followed a fake distress signal?" Marcus asked. Telford shook his head. "Number not fake, just not singular. It was real, but rebroadcast, amplified, like a fire alarm hooked into a citywide PA system. And someone flipped the switch?" "Exactly." He tapped a blinking star chart, an empty region near the galactic edge. "That's where the original pulse came from. We're calling it Source Theta." "What's there?" Telford hesitated. "We don't know. No known star systems, no colonies. No probes have ever returned data from the region. It's just marked as void." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Convenient." Vela leaned against the doorway. "So, what are we saying? We blew up a hive that someone else told them to build?" Telford rubbed his temples. "We always assumed the Zarn were instinct-driven, that their hive queens coordinated breeding, expansion, war. But what if they're not the apex? What if something else commands them?" Marcus went still. "Are you saying the Zarn take orders?" Telford looked up. "I'm saying they're not the source. They're a symptom." The Spectre's jump back to human space was uneventful, eerily so. When they re-entered Terran command range, the encrypted channels came alive. Messages, calls, Warnings, questions. Word of the cradle's destruction had already spread. Fleet Command had decrypted the last pulse transmission and confirmed what Ryland already suspected. The war wasn't over. It had just started making sense. The Zarn hadn't been acting on their own. Their attacks, breeding patterns, even their war formations, they weren't chaotic after all. They were structured, programmed, directed. And that direction came from outside the known galaxy. Marcus stood before the War Council again, this time in person. Admiral Voss sat at the head of the long table, flanked by top brass, intelligence chiefs, AI advisors, and political observers from the United Planetary Coalition. Voss leaned forward. "Captain Ryland, your report is disturbing." Marcus met his gaze. "It's honest. You're suggesting the Zarn are servants, that something else, unknown, unidentified, is giving them orders?" "Yes. And this source, Theta, is where we believe this control originates." "Yes." A silence followed. The room seemed to hold its collective breath. One of the senators leaned in. "Captain, are you proposing we launch another offensive beyond the galaxy, based on a signal trace?" Marcus nodded. "Yes, because if we don't, they'll come to us." Vela stood beside him, supporting his claim. "We're not dealing with wild animals anymore," she said. "We're dealing with structure, strategy, and that means intelligence." Another commander spoke. "You're saying the Zarn have leaders?" "No," Marcus said. "I'm saying the Zarn have masters." The room erupted in whispers. Voss raised a hand. "And if we send a fleet and it vanishes?" Marcus replied coldly. "Then we learn what we're up against before it learns how to finish what the Zarn started." The Admiral stared at him for a long time. Then he nodded once. "Very well. You'll lead the reconnaissance force. You'll have 2 carriers, 4 destroyers, 1 dreadnought, and AI integration clearance. No civilians, no diplomatic observers. This mission is black-flagged from the top. You're on your own." Marcus nodded. A new war had begun. But this time, humanity was marching first. The new fleet gathered near the edge of known space, where star charts grew dark and AI probes returned blank slates. They called the operation Phantom Reach. It was more than reconnaissance. It was a message. "We're coming for you." Marcus stood aboard the flagship, now rechristened the HFS Revenant, a symbol that humanity, like death, never truly left the battlefield. Vela joined him on the command deck. Her limp was gone now, the brace removed, but her fire hadn't dimmed. "You think they know we're coming?" she asked. "I hope they do." She raised a brow. "Why?" "Because fear only works when your enemy remembers the last time you visited." As the countdown to launch began, Marcus stared at the dark expanse ahead. Somewhere beyond those stars was a force that had used the Zarn-like tools, puppets on strings made of flesh and bone. It had sent the Zarn forward. It had destroyed Serac. It had challenged humanity. And now, humanity was answering. The stars ahead were dark. But Marcus Ryland was no longer afraid of the dark. He had become something far worse, the thing the dark should fear. They crossed the threshold of the known galaxy in absolute silence. No speeches, no parades, no broadcasts to Earth. Just a hum of power across the decks of the HFS Revenant and the unwavering commitment of those aboard. The stars thinned behind them, the familiar constellations fading like memories. Ahead lay the null expanse, a stretch of space humanity had never dared explore. It was unmapped, unnamed, and according to the data, almost unnatural. Captain Marcus Ryland stood on the bridge, flanked by Commander Vela and Dr. Telford. The rest of the fleet, 2 carriers, 4 destroyers, and the dreadnought Iron Widow, trailed them like silent shadows. Any sign of the signal? Marcus asked. Telford adjusted the data feeds. Still faint. Same pulse signature we traced from the cradle. Whatever's broadcasting, it's not moving. It's just waiting. That's what worries me, Vela muttered. As the ships slid deeper into the expanse, anomalies began to surface. Gravity spikes, time dilation ripples, pockets of absolute vacuum so pure that even light bent away. Sensors glitched, AI systems twitched. It was like the universe itself was warning them to turn back. But they didn't. They pressed forward. On the fourth day, they found it. At first, they thought it was a planet. Massive, obsidian black, floating dead center in an unlit region of space. But as they drew closer, details emerged. Perfect lines, hexagonal grids, and a ring of artificial satellites orbiting the surface like flies around a corpse. A construct, Telford whispered. It's not a planet, it's a machine. Is it alive? Vela asked. I don't know. Marcus narrowed his eyes. Prep all ships for high alert. No transmissions, no pings. We go in dark. The Revenant led the descent. The structure grew in scope with every kilometer. It was far larger than Earth's moon, possibly larger than Mars. No known species had ever built something on this scale. It made the Zarn cradle look like a toy. And then came the sound. Not over the comms, not through sensors, but inside their heads, a whisper, low, guttural, familiar. You should not have come. Marcus staggered. Vela grabbed the side of her chair, teeth clenched. What the hell was that? Telford's face had gone pale. It's transmitting telepathically, low-frequency psionics, crude, but powerful. Is it a language? Marcus asked. No, Telford said. It's will. The entire fleet came to a stop, floating just above the surface of the structure. Suddenly, lights bloomed across its shell, thousands of them like blinking eyes. They weren't scanning. They were watching. And something moved. A section of the surface unfolded, revealing a massive hangar mouth, miles wide, glowing from within with sickly yellow light. An invitation, Vela said. Or a trap, Telford muttered. Marcus made his decision instantly. I'm going down. Vela turned sharply. Absolutely not. This is why we came. You're the fleet commander. You can't risk... Marcus gave her a look, firm and final. We didn't come here to float outside and stare at it. We came to find out who's pulling the strings. That thing wants to talk. Fine. Let's talk. Vela shook her head in frustration, but didn't argue further. I'm coming with you, she said. Telford sighed. And me. If this thing is ancient tech, I need to see it firsthand. They took the Spectre 2, a stealth shuttle launched from the Revenant's underdeck, and descended into the structure's mouth. The moment they crossed the threshold, gravity shifted. Light bent. Time stuttered. It felt like slipping underwater. Then they landed. The interior wasn't mechanical. It was organic, but not alive. The walls pulsed with warmth, not from blood, but from data. Streams of code ran like veins, glowing with energy far beyond human comprehension. Everything was symmetrical, almost ritualistic in design. Vela looked around. This isn't just a structure. Telford nodded slowly. It's a temple. A voice echoed again, stronger this time. You kill what you do not understand. You burn what you fear. The air rippled. Then a shape appeared. It wasn't Zarn. It wasn't human. It was something in between. Tall, slender, wrapped in layered armor that shimmered like fluid. Its face was hidden behind a blank mask, but its presence filled the chamber like a god descending from a dream. Marcus raised his weapon reflexively. The figure didn't move. Instead, it spoke. You destroyed the cradle. You delayed the awakening, but you did not stop it. Vela's voice was tight. What are you? The figure tilted its head slightly. We are the architects. The Zarn are our hounds. You, our test. Marcus stepped forward. You sent them. We made them. We seeded them, as we have done before. Telford's jaw dropped. They're not an alien species, they're manufactured. Designed for war, for purification. The stars grow crowded. Civilizations spread like infection. We prune. Marcus stared, his voice cold. You're exterminators. We are balance. Something deep in Marcus snapped. He stepped closer, eyes burning. You murdered billions. You unleashed monsters. You turned the galaxy into a feeding ground. And you think you're balance? The figure remained still. You misunderstand. You were not meant to survive. Marcus raised his rifle and fired. The bolt passed straight through the figure like smoke. This is not form. This is memory. Telford grabbed Marcus's shoulder. Captain, this isn't a creature. It's a construct, a projection. Maybe thousands of years old. Then where's the real one? The structure answered. They sleep. For now. But your actions have accelerated the cycle. We will awaken. We will come. Vela stepped forward. Why show yourselves now? The figure seemed to flicker. Because you are the first to come to us, the first to disobey fear, the first to burn our hounds. You are interesting. Marcus's voice was low. You're afraid. We do not feel fear. Then why warn us? The figure said nothing. Then it slowly raised a hand, and suddenly the walls lit up. Dozens of galaxies, hundreds of worlds, civilizations erased, memories of destruction encoded in light and sound. Humanity was not the first. Others came, others fought. All failed. Marcus stared at the final image, Earth burning in blue flame. A vision. A threat. He turned back to the figure. We'll be the last, he said. We don't lose twice. Then he turned and walked away. Vela and Telford followed, silent. As they boarded the shuttle and flew back towards the fleet, the temple doors closed behind them. No alarms, no chase, just one final message in their minds. Prepare. When they returned to the Revenant, the fleet stood ready. Weapons online. Shields up. Marcus stepped onto the bridge and took the command chair. Transmit everything, he ordered. Back to Earth, uncensored. Let them see what we saw. Vela turned to him. What now? He looked out at the vast structure in the distance. Now? He said. We build. Build what? Telford asked. Marcus's voice was hard. An army. The message hit Earth like a thunderclap. The visual feed of Marcus Ryland's encounter, broadcast unfiltered, raw, and terrifying, played on every major channel across the United Planetary Coalition. People saw the cradle, the architect, the vision of Earth engulfed in blue fire, and worse, those final two words, prepare. For the first time in human history, there were no deniers, no skeptics, no delays in diplomacy. The enemy was no longer just monstrous. It was ancient, intelligent, and far beyond the cruelty of the Zarn. They were not at war with a species. They were at war with an ideology, an intelligence that saw humanity as an infection in need of removal. So Earth did what Earth always did. It adapted. It evolved. It armed. Within days, Operation Black Sun was authorized. Entire planets were converted into shipyards. Mars reopened its deep foundry war vaults. Luna's AI core reawakened after 3 decades in cold storage. The Jovian moons pledged their orbital cannons and antimatter stores. Even the fractured fringe colonies sent volunteers, miners, outlaws, smugglers, all now united under one cause, for survival. Marcus Ryland stood on the balcony of Orbital Command, overlooking the Titan foundry, as the first of Earth's new dreadnoughts rolled out of dry dock. Unlike anything before it, this wasn't built for defense. This was a planet killer, designed to punch through anything the architects could unleash. It was called the Resolute. Commander Vela stepped beside him, now back in full armor, scar on her cheek still fresh from the last encounter. "Fleet status?" Marcus asked. 3 dreadnoughts completed, 6 more in final phase, 60 destroyers, 200 stealth corvettes. The Revenant has been retrofitted, now a mobile command station. He nodded. "And the archive?" Vela hesitated. Still being decoded. Whatever the architects are, they didn't just leave warnings. They left templates. He turned. "Weapons? We don't know. Oh, I can't crack half the language. But it's clear they've done this before, to others. Some civilizations tried to resist. A few even wounded them, but none survived." Marcus's jaw clenched. "Until now." She looked at him. "We might not win, Marcus." He didn't blink. "Then we make sure no one else has to fight them again." Back on the Revenant, the core team assembled once more. Telford, Vela, the new AI integration specialist Lieutenant Kira Desai, and Marcus himself. Telford paced the strategy room, holding a holopad full of architect glyphs. "We've cracked part of the signal pattern from the Source Theta site. They weren't just communicating between hives. They were waking up a central entity." Marcus leaned in. "The control node?" "Number something worse. A prime, an architect overlord, the one that gives the others purpose." "Where is it?" Vela asked. Telford tapped the holomap. "We think it's buried beneath a collapsed star system. Exo Null 993. No natural movement, no trade lanes, and no gravity. Like something turned off the laws of physics there." Desai added, "The architect signal is faint, but present. It's not a base. It's a throne." Marcus looked at the glowing red dot. "That's our target." Operation Godfall was launched 72 hours later. Every ship Earth could muster formed the largest armada in human history. Over 500 warships, tens of thousands of fighters, and mobile AI command arrays. Their mission wasn't to survive. It was to deliver the first blow. The Revenant led the way, slicing through the black toward Exo Null 993. As they entered the system, it became clear this place had been erased. No planets, no moons, no light, just stillness. A kind of death that didn't rot, it simply endured. And in the center of that abyss, they found the Prime. It wasn't a ship. It was a structure the size of a gas giant. Part cathedral, part machine, part corpse. It pulsed faintly, its surface crawling with dormant Zarn-like creatures, asleep but twitching in slow cycles, as if dreaming of blood. Marcus stood on the bridge of the Revenant, surrounded by flickering tactical displays. "This is it," he said. "This is where we end it." "Or start something worse," Desai whispered. Vela checked her weapon. "Then let's make it count." The battle began with light. The human fleet opened fire in synchronized waves. Plasma lances, graviton torpedoes, EMP disruptors. Entire sectors of the Prime's outer shell shattered. Dormant Zarn awoke mid-burst, swatted from the void like insects. Then the architect responded, not with ships, not with drones, but with thought. A psionic wave blasted from the core of the Prime. AI systems glitched. Pilots screamed in their cockpits. 3 ships turned on each other, driven mad by the invasive surge. Desai fought to stabilize the Revenant's command AI. "They're not jamming us. They're trying to overwrite us," Marcus barked. "Reinforce neural firewalls. Shut down non-essential systems. Move to analog control if you have to." The second wave hit harder. From the Prime's surface, tendrils of metallic bone reached outward, some kilometers long, attempting to ensnare the closest vessels. One destroyer, the Cerberus, was caught mid-turn, crushed like a tin can. Still, the human fleet pushed forward. The Iron Widow activated its Godhammer cannon, a prototype planetary buster, and fired at the Prime's core. The beam tore through 6 layers of armor and struck something that bled. The Prime screamed, not audibly, but inside every mind within the system, a rage older than suns, a voice that shook souls. You cannot stop what was begun before your stars were born. Marcus bared his teeth. We're not here to stop it. We're here to kill it. The Revenant broke through the outer shell, leading a spearhead strike team directly into the Prime's heart. Marcus, Vela, and a squad of elite operatives boarded through a breach carved by the dreadnoughts. Inside was nothing but horror. Rows of suspended architect bodies, half machine, half bone, hung in stasis. Their thoughts hummed in the air, cold and ancient. Telford, who had joined them, scanned frantically. "That's the Prime brainstem," he said, pointing to a column of light deeper inside the chamber. "If we overload it, the entire architect neural lattice collapses." Marcus nodded. "Set the charges." As they moved toward the core, visions began to haunt them. Memories that weren't theirs. Entire planets consumed, species tortured, some forced to worship the architects as gods before being annihilated. "They don't fight because they hate," Vela said quietly. "They fight because they believe it's mercy." Telford wired the charges. "Ready." Marcus stared at the brainstem. Then he pressed the detonator. The explosion was like the cracking of a divine bone. Across the system, architect ships spasmed, then froze. The Prime began to collapse in on itself, its psychic hold shattering. The human fleet pulled back, engines flaring, and for the first time since the war began. The architects went silent. Back on Earth, the stars no longer flickered with dread. The war was not over. But something had changed. The enemy now knew humanity wasn't a species that ran. They were not prey. They were not manageable. They were the virus the universe couldn't purge. Marcus Ryland stood once more on the Revenant's bridge, overlooking the debris field of the destroyed Prime. "Status?" he asked. Vela smiled slightly. "Fleet intact. 53 losses. The architect signal is gone." Telford added, "We may have severed the command node. The remaining hives may still exist, but now they're headless." Marcus watched the void. "They'll return one day." Vela nodded. "Then we'll be ready." And for the first time, he believed it, because humanity had stared into the oldest darkness the stars had to offer. And the darkness blinked.